Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Enterprise Dish. It is the end of the month. We have the Ohio boys at it again. And, Rick, it's been, I bet for some IT pros out there, some pretty testing times because we've got two stories on the agenda for today that are going to kind of make people, I think, their palms sweat a little bit. But how's it going, my man?
It's going well, and I think all of us are dealing with our own
Mm-hmm.
flavor for those of us with kids with back to school. Um, I don't know. Mine's been really good. We were just talking about that. I feel the arrangement we've got this year for my youngest is great. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
it's really an interesting year, right?
Yeah.
Interesting into the summer. Going into September, I feel that the technology again is more important than ever. So yeah, it's a really interesting time right now, and I have been so busy, Brad. Busiest I've ever been, actually. And my family, because I'm not traveling,
Mm-hmm.
they think I'm unemployed now. No, no, no. Still plenty going on, Mom.
Yeah.
But oh,
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, yeah, I don't think there's any chance that I'm getting on a plane right now between now and the end of the year, unless it's some private plane and I'm headed to the Caymans because some serious windfalls have come my way. But I'm not foreseeing that, unfortunately, in the near future. I should say, unfortunately.
probably the same. I don't foresee a work trip.
Yeah.
There's one maybe, but I do have a drive trip coming up. That's
Hmm.
like kind of I'm actually quite excited for that. But yeah, I don't see like a regular work trip for at least into next year. The only news I watch is the vaccine tracker, right?
Yeah.
And that is actually looking pretty good. There's now 9 worldwide in phase 3. So I think once some of those come out, then that they're saying this Nike swoosh type of recovery,
That's what we have.
like that.
Don't jinx it.
Yeah.
Knocking on wood, crossing fingers, everything. That is where we are headed. But
Yeah.
somebody who, well, there's no cure for this one, at least not now, other than it cost them rumored to be $10 million. $10 million is that we've all heard about Gartner and what happened there. They got ransomware, but I think this is one of the points that's important about this is that we've talked about before here. They sort of had backups, but they didn't. I'm guessing that they didn't fully have air gapped, and even if they did, they weren't able to recover them. I'm curious just on your thoughts on how this all played out, but this was a massive issue for them, and it sounds like they ended up just paying the piper and just moving on.
Well, you see it every day. Whatever organization has to deal with ransomware, it's the specialization I've taken here at Veeam. The number one shortcoming, I go downstairs, well, they're not here right now, but I love talking to the support team. The number one piece of advice to beat ransomware is to have a copy of data on something that's ultra resilient, right? And if you don't have that, or if you don't have that other copy in that other place that's offline, that's air gapped, that's immutable, you're really at risk. And the backup threat actors are very advanced today.
Mm-hmm.
They know to go look at backup software. They know to go crawl storage systems. There's a phenomena called dwell time where the ransomware will assess and look, things like that. So this is something I've written a lot about, and every quarter I kind of update my advice. And the kind of the du jour advice I have nowadays is to have like your backup infrastructure isolated from the network from an internet perspective, no internet access for the backup infrastructure, and then kind of this mindset of explicit minimal required privileges on a different authentication boundary. So it could be as simple as an isolated Active Directory domain, could be as simple as standalone accounts, Windows and Linux. But when the backup copy is on something that's ultra resilient, that's your best thing. And you saw, I don't know if you saw the Tesla news where there was a thwarted
Yep.
attack where someone tried to bribe or just buy their way in to being an
Mm-hmm.
internal threat. That's a different type of phenomena, right? When you compromise some of the knowledge workers that know where the technologies are. It's really a tough battle, but something on an ultra resilient media is the best way to be resilient. And you see a lot of storage companies making some really good investments now. Everything from backup appliances, like I know Exagrid has something coming. NetApp and
Mm-hmm.
Pure Storage have some really good stuff. The cloud is a really good mechanism as well. Veeam announced we're going to be doing some Azure Cool Archive storage, which is inherently out of the administrative console of Veeam. We're already doing something like that with Amazon. So there's a lot of ways to do it. And on my Twitter feed, pinned at the top, is my paper with the latest advice. So if those of you want to read up, even if you're not using Veeam, by the way, you can probably learn something from that paper for sure.
Very cool.
Piece of trivia for you, Brad.
Uh-oh.
Where do you think most ransomware comes in from? I'll give you a choice of 3. Phish email, remote desktop, or exploiting vulnerabilities?
I would guess email, phishing emails, just because the cost of entry to do that from an outsider perspective is really low.
So I had grown up in the ransomware era thinking phish email was the threat escape, like number one mode in, but by a factor of like 3, it's actually phish email, or I'm sorry, it's remote access technologies not secured. So remote desktop or other remote access technologies not with 2-factor, not, not deployed over the internet. By the way, that's not a good idea to do remote desktop over the internet nowadays. That's the most popular mode of entry for, like, I want to say the last 6 quarters in a row from the group that I see tracking that. And that actually shocked me. So that my advice is train on phish email, secure remote access technologies, and do Windows updates and other updates, which we should be doing anyways. And if you can kind of address those 3 things, 97% of the ransomware attack vector can be mitigated, right? So I kind of explained some of that in my paper, but I've seen nothing but examples here on ransomware. And, it's like, it's just, it kind of is heartbreaking because you look at some organizations that get targeted, like schools, small city governments and stuff like that, because they know that those IT environments haven't had the wherewithal to implement the layers of resiliency. Maybe they don't have the budget for that additional type of storage. It's ultra resilient, or the cloud, or those other things. But the technologies are there, folks. So I just hope that organizations can make sure that their backup implementation, whatever it is ultra resilient. Because if ransomware gets in, you have 2 options, and one of them, a third, I don't want to acknowledge. One is restore from backup. The other is conscious loss of data, and then you don't want to pay the ransom. Yeah. I really only see 2 options, but that's it. If ransomware gets in, that's what we're dealing with.
So I have, this is shooting from the hip, which is something I've made a career out of. So you said that remote desktop or remote access is the primary method that it's getting in. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of research by Coveware.
Okay.
And Coveware, and I've really liked their ransomware reporting on the ways that ransomware gets into organizations. They, for like a number of quarters, I want to say 6 quarters straight, have said that remote desktop is the most popular mode of entry. Whether or not it's on the internet, how it gets in there, not quite sure, but like that is a consistent threat vector where these ransomware strains come in. And then there's so many different types of ransomware that might even just be limited to, I don't even know how to pronounce some of these different things, right? But like there's 1 or 2 that I see kind of constantly in the news, right? They like to use remote desktop. So my thought is that's a big attack vector. So a simple mode is 2-factor authentication, and then get a little bit more precise with like the backup infrastructure. Don't have that be accessible without 2-factor authentication, much less over the internet, right? Because again, if it's in there, we need to restore. So
here's my logic that circulates in my brain, digesting what you just said. Phishing email is the easy way, right? It's just blanket. It's let's just target everything under the sun. We're just going to see if anybody even clicks this stuff. And it's pretty well or known or understood, at least from the IT pro side, about how you can mitigate some of that. The remote desktop or that sort of environment, my gut says that if you can find where that company is using that particular product and how they're using it, one, you're already probably pretty well educated in the topic and you already know the exploits. So once you find that, unlike email, which is really easy to blanket attack, once you find that access path, you probably have a higher likelihood of getting in because you're already sophisticated enough to know how to work through that track and then find the exploits that they just have yet to patch.
Fair point. Or one to the other. Maybe
Sure.
fish
Yep.
email is the
Yep.
way in to start the remote
Yep.
desktop to then find the vulnerability, right? They could work together as well. And then couple that with an insider attack knowledge, and it gets really scary real quickly. So, you know, this is a thing that I love when I have the stories of organizations who beat ransomware with Veeam, and we just had 2 of them come up at VeeamON in June. I've just secured 2 more for an upcoming event that we have, Veeam Live, in October. And the funny thing is, the 2 that we had in June, one beat it with backups in Azure, and the other beat it with DR done right, which we're supposed to have DR anyways. Coming up, I'm really curious what this one city in Florida beat ransomware with, and then this other person who works for a city in the state of Alaska. Really curious. What did they do? Was it tape? Was it a storage snapshot? Was it some sort of offline media? Because when you see the stories, the common theme is an ultra resilient type of backup, right? So that's the thing that we all need to have in the mix to beat ransomware for sure.
And then sometimes things happen by accident. If you are KPMG, they had what I like to call, we could almost make this a weekly thing, a slip of the script, if you will, and they accidentally deleted 145,000 personal chats when they were trying to remove one. Instead, I think they retained that one and deleted all the others for their tenant, and they were unable to recover any of that.
So that's funny. We internally, we were joking because, man, wouldn't it be great if our version 5 of Veeam Backup for Office 365 was out, because we support backing up Teams now, and native restore as well. So, you know, data loss in the SaaS and cloud space is actually really important to think about, because there's the shared responsibility model that Microsoft puts out that really makes it very clear that your data is your responsibility, and the provider provides the services for it. So we've really gravitated onto that, and it would be great if we had this capability out, because we could that'd be a really good scaled restore. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if they delete all of our chats internally and then restore them to see if it works. I mean, scaling these types of things is hard to test, Brad.
145,000 conversations, and who knows how much actual data that is. It's going to be sizable.
Yeah, I mean, it really, I wouldn't actually be surprised if email kind of goes down and Teams traffic and scaling goes up, especially for internal organizational communication. My team now uses Teams. Very rarely do we email each other. In my group of 15, I have 10 people on my team, and then the 5 peers and my boss, Danny, very much focused over to Teams, which is good. I want that, but there's still a place for email. It's whenever external groups and, you know, other parts of the business come in, I find Teams a little bit more, but the data is just as critical, and, you know, we have to keep it available as such.
Yeah, well, there's also legal requirements too. You can't forget about those, which that was kind of the conversation that came up right away with KPMG, is like, if they ever get into an e-discovery situation, whoops. Yeah,
good point. And the worst thing you want to do is be in an e-discovery situation.
Well, yes, that's the first thing you want to avoid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now watch them be in an e-discovery situation because people are curious about what they accidentally deleted. Like, were you really trying to hide something? But anyways, Rick, we did have a reader question come in, and it was from an individual that they wanted to ask Rick specifically. They said, is backup as a service really a thing I should consider, or is it still better to roll my own BaaS, or backup as a service? Is it better for smaller shops, or can large enterprise companies do it too? We have about 1,500 employees at my organization, and we are exploring additional backup opportunities, and BaaS is one of the things on the agenda.
So, you know, BaaS, or backup as BaaS, is it's come up a lot recently. And the funny thing is, now for longer than I've been at Veeam, we've had our service providers offering that for a long time. In fact, I'll name drop one in the Midwest of the United States, ISG Technologies. They do that, and they will provide a managed Veeam installation. And they found that those types of customers really like that approach. And it becomes kind of similar to other services, right? Whether it's things like your internet bandwidth, whether it's
Hmm.
even facilities type services, there's some parts of the technology operation that really can allow you to focus on what you're supposed to do, the applications, the data, the customers, that a backup as a service option, especially if you don't have that technology skill in house, can be a very big value add. We're actually getting ready probably to promote a little bit more of that because we've had it forever, but we've
Hmm.
never really promoted it. And so, for example, I just did this webinar with ISG Technologies about this, and it's rather impressive because it can also be more than backup. It can also lead you to the DR conversation done right, because sometimes service providers have extra resources, right? They have the knowledge around backup, but they have the resources to provide you DR. Put those together, and you really walk into a very broad set of opportunities that can help you with ransomware, that can help you with your daily disasters of losing files. It can help you with an actual DR event. But then it also kind of becomes this very interesting kind of administrative boundary that is very helpful when you're ever in audits and
Hmm.
e-discovery and just roles and stuff. So there's a lot of things that actually come with that. At face value, I don't want to say outsource this type of function, but the reality is it kind of inherently rounds out a lot of other business processes. So yeah, and if anybody listening wants to talk more about that, just hit me up on the DM and I'll do some intros.
Yeah, my initial gut reaction, because again, shooting from the hip is great, is that you need to take into account the overhead that is involved with backup and managing all that. And if you have the capacity, meaning personnel in place who can do all that for you already, then maybe outsourcing it isn't the best option. But if you're a taxed IT shop and you don't have a lot of additional capacity or resources, offloading that to a vendor who specializes in that and can do everything for you, and then you just manage the relationship that's a pretty significant benefit.
It is. And you can also get into situations where you can alleviate concerns about capital expenses for storage
Yep.
or capital expenses for anything. There are some of this technology that are actually 100% off-site backups. So you inherently have your 3-2-1 rules set up.
Hmm.
Some of these arrangements will include storage resources on premises, so that first copy is close and quick. There's so many different ways to splice the as a service,
Yeah.
and it's definitely worth checking out. To the root of the question, what's better? It's hard.
Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
actually the really fundamental part, because no two data centers, environments, on premises IT deployments are the same. No two cloud deployments are the same. And the skill sets are different, the expectations are different. So it's really hard to discern which is the best way to go. But Veeam's very much taken this agnostic of choice approach where individuals and organizations can choose the mode that suits them best.
Good advice as always, Rick, as we wrap it up here in the back of the book. Anything else happen in your life? I know usually we have a lot of like travel or food stuff or playing outside adventures, but this year has certainly been a little bit more interesting than some of the past, for obvious reasons.
So I'm renting an RV.
Oh.
RV is renting an RV. And there's I don't want to call it like a Verbo or an Airbnb of
Hmm.
RVs. It's called Outdoorsy. And we're not quite sure, A, if we like it, and then
Yeah.
B, what type we want. So that this is a market in the US that actually has just exploded. So
Sure.
many people
Oh
are
yeah,
buying
yeah.
boats and campers, given the circumstances. And of course, I'm falling into that. But the other side of it is without the travel, I actually have the time to like chill and relax,
Yeah.
right? So we have decided we're going to do a super weekend and rent one to kind of see how it's going to go. It's going to be a travel trailer. Then we're going to rent what they call a Class C, which is one that's like a vehicle that drives on its own.
Okay.
And we're going to see, do we like it and which one do we like? And do we want to do it again? Do we want to buy one?
Hmm.
Incredible value out there on some of the pre-owned models. So
Sure. Yeah, they depreciate pretty
could,
quick.
yeah, my kids are at the right age where they would really, really engage with this, right? So,
Hmm.
and we live in Ohio, one of the states in the Midwestern United States that I'm in the middle of the state, so within like 2.5 hours, I can be anywhere in the state. And there's a lot of great resources. I could even go into neighboring states and get wonderful outdoor stuff, mountains,
Yep.
waterways, and the stuff. So, yeah, we got this great weekend planned. We're going to bring the canoe and the bikes and this camper, and I'll have to give you a report on that.
Yeah, I will be very curious. I think, like many families in the United States, at least I like to think so, we always have the dream, and I think we're getting close to where my kid would be old enough to do it, just to go out west, right? Hit the Yosemites, hit the all the parks in Wyoming, and do all that stuff with an RV. Now, I don't know if I'd want to drive, candidly, an RV from Cincinnati, Ohio to Wyoming, and then Wyoming more so back. But we've contemplated the idea of just like flying out to Butte, Montana, and trying to see how you can like rent one for 2 weeks and do that whole tour. And that's
You can do that too. And we actually are thinking, so like I have this whole matrix, and it all depends on the car I buy next year. Okay. So what's probably going to happen is I'm going to buy a boat and then continue to rent RVs and travel trailers,
yeah,
because renting boats is a little bit less common
gotcha.
for a lot of
Yep.
reasons, right? So my thought is buy a boat, rent an RV, and do just that. The moment the target is way out away, or even Alaska or something, right? Rent a travel trailer, or, well, not so much a travel trailer, but rent a motorhome there, proximus to the main targets,
Yep.
and then fly back and forth. Because I love these great ideas, but I don't have the time, for
Right. It's that drive. The drive
the
out
3 days each way.
and back is what would like. I think I'd be okay with the drive out, because you're all excited. You're like, we're gonna go see all this stuff, and you're driving a big old vehicle. And then on the drive home, you're like, we've done all this stuff, and we're driving this big old vehicle. Like,
Well, you have to put a highlight on the way back. A lot of people go up one way and back another, and on the back another, they'll make sure they'll hit something of interest, right, close-ish to home. So we'll think about it, but I don't have infinite amounts of time, right? So, I mean, I can do a 2-week vacation, that I can do. And my wife, her big thing is we got to have a comfortable bed. She loves a good proper sleep. It's very important to her. So. There's many criteria that I'm going to have to manage with this project, but pretty sure when I buy the next vehicle next year, then a boat, then continually renting an RV will do the RV. So that's what's up.
and that is the podcast. Thanks for hanging out, Rick. Thanks to everybody else. Hit that subscribe button. We'll catch all of you right back here next time.